Ready for day 9? Good. There were 6 witnesses, so this is probably going to be 2 videos because you guys know I talk a lot, but let's get into it. So first was the blood expert that was back from Friday, and I got to say, for a prosecution witness, she was good, actually, considering she was, smart. She knew her stuff. She was concise. Yes, no. I didn't have any problem with her. No one argues. No one argues that Karen was drunk. No one argues that everybody was drunk. I think at this point, it's just a separation of this 1/10 of a point or that 1/10 of a point. Now, the one thing I think she did clarify was that she's testifying as to how blood alcohol content works, and the blood alcohol content in Karen's blood when it was drawn that morning after they found John and Karen was taken to the hospital for psych evaluation. That's when it was drawn. So they've done this kind of funky math to try and backdate it to here's how drunk she was at 12:30 that night. That's fine. They were all drunk. There's no arguing that. She explained how they do different calculations, and Yannetti talked to her a lot about the level of water in blood and how food or medicine and different things could impact the amount of water in your blood. And then she just also simply testified that the blood was drawn at Good Samaritan Hospital, and they don't have the same standards for drawing blood as her facility does, and that she can't kind of vouch for them having done it all correctly. I really felt, honestly, my personal belief, she was a pretty smart lady, and she was not at all hard to listen to. We move on to Ryan Nagel, who testified in the first round, and his answers were a little different this time. I don't know why anyone would lie about a couple of things, but there's some disconnects. He said in this testimony that they were at CF McCarthy's all night when they got the call from Julie Nagel to come pick them up. But they weren't. They went from CF McCarthy's to Hillside. That is in the first testimony. It is possible that they crossed paths with Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, who'd been at Hillside earlier that evening. They went there to eat. So it's possible. I don't know what time the Bryans left Hillside to go to Waterfall, and I don't know what time Ryan left CF McCarthy's to go to Hillside. I do not know if they crossed paths. Maybe they did. I'm not trying to start rumors. I just don't know. He also mentioned that his sister Julie was with them for a little while at CF McCarthy's. But then Sarah Levinson, and I'll get into her testimony in a minute, but then Sarah Levinson said she was with Julie at the Nagel's home, and Mr. Nagel, the father, dropped them off directly at the Alberts. So she doesn't say anything about Julie being at CF McCarthy's. He did say that he saw, they were directly behind Karen. He did see her brake lights. He saw brake lights, then he saw no brake lights, then he saw brake lights. So that gives us the impression that she stopped at the end of the driveway, let John out, and then she moved further down. The other car, Ricky's truck, pulled in right behind him. There was no one in between, and there was no white Jeep at the end of the driveway. And they sat there, and then as they were leaving, he did establish that Karen was alone in the car. The dome light was on. There was no one in the passenger seat. And the time frame that the 3 people in the truck were in front of the house is within that same time frame that they're saying Karen hit John. So would have witnessed this murder had anything happened at that time. Heather was exactly as steady as she was last time. What's interesting about her testimony too, what I think she tells me, if I'm on the jury, that Karen had a moment of clarity. We all know Karen was drunk and she shouldn't have been driving, but there's that kind of moment of clarity where they all come to that T-junction to turn on Fairview. Ricky is turning left, Karen is turning right, and they've come to like a T-junction. Neither of them have a stop sign. Technically, because Karen's turning right, she has the right of way, but they both stop. Heather does say Ricky had his blinker on, and she noticed that Karen had her blinker on. As drunk as she was, Karen still had the wherewithal to stop her vehicle, turn on her blinker, and wait to see what the other car was doing. It's probably not the habit of somebody who's shit-faced drunk and isn't comprehending what they're doing. So I do believe, and we've all been there, we've all been drunk, and then something happens and we like sober up real quick. There could have been a moment of clarity for Karen where she was like, okay, but just get me safely to this home. And so she turns ahead of them, they turn. By the way, we don't know what happened in the car between Karen and John, but I'm guessing if there's nobody else on the road, as a blizzard is about to start, like everyone else is hunkered down at home. There's no one out on the roads. So if I see another car turning onto Fairview with 3 people in it, I might think, oh, I wonder if they're going to the same place we are. So that might be why Karen pulls down further to let the other vehicle behind them, because they're probably thinking, oh, they're probably going to the party too. Sarah Levinson made my heart stop for just a minute, because we're going to see her up on the stand. But Julie Nagel, when I first started this trial last year, I made a whole video on Julie because this was when I was still a little, wet behind the ears, and I thought perjury was really uncommon. And I really felt that Julie Nagel had committed perjury. I'm like, how do you get up there and lie? She never told anybody about seeing anything on the lawn. The story's always been, nope, 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 we didn't see anything, we didn't see anything. But Julie Nagel steps up on the stand in the first trial and says, as we drove by, I looked over, and she was on the driver's side. So she had to look across her friend like this to see. And she said, I saw a 5 to 6 foot black blob over by the flagpole. That was news. Well, I thought Sarah was going to go there. And Brennan was teeing her up. I'm telling you, I wonder if she just chickened out, because she's talking about how they're all in the car. They get in the car and they're talking about the peanut butter and the bread. And she does say that Jen McCabe is turned around and she's talking to them in between the console, right? She's talking to them. And Brennan says, as you drove past the front of the house, were you looking anywhere? Were you talking about the peanut butter? She says, no, the conversation had already ended by then. And I'm like, it did? Because according to Jen McCabe, that conversation carried on as they drove past the flagpole. And he says, so what were you doing? She's like, we were just talking. I was looking down at my phone. And then I heard Julie say something, because Julie insists that she said, what's that on the lawn? And nobody heard her. So Sarah says, I heard Julie say something, so I looked out the window. And Sarah's on the passenger side. So Sarah looks out the window, and I'm thinking, she's not. If this girl mentions something about a black blob on that fucking lawn, I'm going to lose my mind. And he goes, did you see something? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, so as you drove past the flagpole area, you were looking directly out the window, and what did you see? And she's like, and I'm like, here it comes. Oh, fuck, she's going to say it. And all of a sudden she goes, well, kind of at the edge of the property, between the houses. Well, there were trees and stuff. I mean, that's just what I saw, were trees and stuff. And I thought, well, that was anticlimactic. Was that the answer she was supposed to give? I'm always going to be curious about that, because it felt to me like he was teeing her up, because she said, I heard Julie say something. And in Julie's testimony, she saw the black blob. And when she's asked, well, why didn't you say something? She goes, I did. I said, hey, you guys, look. And everybody was too busy talking. They were laughing, and no one paid any attention to me. So no one else saw it. So that's what I thought Sarah Levinson was about ready to say. And I was about ready to lose my damn mind. Anyway, that's not what she said. She did put Julie Nagel in the Albert house between 7 and 8 p.m. And that's really all she talks about. Her name was left off of some early reports, or it was like misspelled, so no one knew who she was. And she wasn't questioned until that fall. She wasn't questioned until 8 months later, after the feds got involved. So I don't know. There's just something weird about these girls and them being at that party that night. But come back, I'm going to talk about the other two witnesses.